In 1985, John Deere had 4,000 unsold tractors sitting in a lot in Waterloo, Iowa. Their biggest competitor had just collapsed and been sold off for parts. And the company was staring at a future that nobody inside those factories wanted to say out loud. This is the story of how the most recognized name in farming almost did not survive, and the one decision made years before the crisis that nobody talks about, the decision that actually saved them. Stay with me, because the answer is not what you think it is. There is a man most people have never heard of named Robert Hansen. He was chairman of Deere & Company during the worst years of the farm crisis. In 1985, he stood in front of cameras and said something that very few corporate executives say during a collapse. He said, "We have done some things we hated to do." No spin, no strategy language, just a man who understood that thousands of real people were going home without jobs because of decisions made in boardrooms and by markets and by forces bigger than any single company. That sentence matters. Remember it. To understand the crash, you first need to understand the high. The 1970s were genuinely extraordinary for American farming. In 1973, the United States signed a massive wheat deal with the Soviet Union. Suddenly, American grain was feeding a significant portion of the world. Crop prices doubled and in some cases tripled within a single year. Land values went up, banks were lending freely. Farmers borrowed to buy more land because the numbers made sense and everything pointed up. John Deere was selling equipment as fast as they could build it. Revenue was climbing. The factories in Waterloo were running hard. The future looked like it had no ceiling at all. But here's the thing about cycles that farming teaches you faster than almost any other industry. What goes up does not stay up. The 1980s did not arrive slowly. They arrived like a door slamming shut. The Federal Reserve raised interest rates sharply to fight inflation. Overnight, those loans that made perfect sense in the 1970s became impossible to carry. Land values started falling. Crop prices collapsed. Farmers who had borrowed against land that was now worth less found themselves trapped with no way out. Agricultural debt across the United States hit $216 billion by 1984. In Iowa alone, it reached $17 billion. Think about what that actually means for a moment. Farmers who had worked the same ground for 20 and 30 years were losing it, not because they were bad farmers, because the entire economic floor underneath them had dropped and there was nothing to grab onto. John Deere felt every single dollar of it. Between 1980 and 1983, the company laid off 40% of its hourly wage workers in the United States. 40%. The city of Waterloo, Iowa lost 14% of its entire population in the early part of the decade. Houses went empty. Schools had fewer children. Businesses that had served those factory workers for generations closed their doors. The Quad Cities region of Iowa and Illinois lost an estimated 20,000 manufacturing jobs, and a large share of those were connected to John Deere. And then came the moment that should have finished the story. In 1984, International Harvester, one of the oldest and most powerful names in American agricultural equipment, lost $200 million and made the decision to sell its farm equipment division entirely. They sold it to Tenneco, which merged it into the Case brand. International Harvester, gone. A name that had been part of American farming since the 1800s simply stopped existing as an independent company because the crisis was that severe. John Deere was standing right next to that same edge. 4,000 unsold tractors in a Waterloo lot, sales falling from $5.5 billion in 1980 to $4.5 billion by 1985. A 30% workforce reduction across the entire company, factories shutting down temporarily just to stop the bleeding. So why is there still a John Deere? This is where the story gets genuinely interesting. The answer is not found in the 1980s at all. It is found in the 1970s, in the good years, when nobody was looking for problems because everything was working. While the money was coming in during the boom years, Deere's management made a decision that looked almost unnecessary at the time. Instead of distributing the profits or expanding recklessly, they used a significant portion of the good year's earnings to pay down company debt. They invested in modernizing their factories with new manufacturing technology. They brought in computer-aided design systems that most manufacturers were not using yet. They restructured how they built things, using methods that reduced waste and cut costs without cutting corners. Here's a simple way to understand what just-in-time manufacturing actually means. Imagine you're running a kitchen. The old way is to keep enormous amounts of ingredients in storage because you never know what you might need. It costs money to store all of it, and some of it goes to waste. The new way is to have ingredients arrive exactly when you need them, not before, not after. Less waste, lower costs, more efficient use of everything you have. Deere applied that same thinking to how they built tractors, and it meant that when revenue fell in the 1980s, their cost structure was lean enough to survive at lower volumes. That lean structure meant something else, too. When the crisis hit and borrowing became necessary, Deere could access money at reasonable rates because their balance sheet was strong. Their competitors were paying extreme rates to borrow or could not borrow at all. The financial discipline of the 1970s became the survival mechanism of the 1980s. But here is the part that the business analysis always skips over. Here is the part that actually explains why John Deere still means something to the farmers who run their equipment. During the crisis, while cutting costs aggressively inside the company, Deere did not abandon its dealers and it did not abandon its customers. They created financing programs that helped farmers who were still buying equipment to actually afford it. They kept dealers alive with inventory support and interest incentives specifically so those dealers would still be there when the crisis ended. In an era when the easiest decision would have been to pull back completely and just try to survive, Deere kept showing up. A dealer in Iowa who was kept alive through the worst years of the 1980s by Deere support is not going to forget that. A farmer who got a financing arrangement that let him keep farming when everything else was telling him to stop is not going to forget that either. Brand loyalty is not built by advertising. It is built in the moments when staying is harder than leaving. Deere stayed. That is not just strategy. That is character. Now, here's where this stops being history and starts being something else. The same cycle is running again right now. Commodity prices are down. Corn prices have fallen 37% from 2022 peaks. Soybean prices are down 24%. Farm incomes are under pressure across both the US and UK. And John Deere has been laying off workers in Waterloo again. More than 1,700 employees across Iowa facilities were let go through 2024. The number has continued into 2025. History does not repeat exactly. The conditions are different. The company is different. The scale is different. But the shape of the cycle, boom years followed by falling commodity prices, followed by equipment demand drying up, followed by factory layoffs, that shape is familiar to anyone who was paying attention in 1982. The question worth sitting with is this. Are the decisions being made inside that company right now anything like the ones made in the 1970s that saved them the first time? Are they building something in the good years that will hold when the bad years arrive? Or are they assuming the good years reflect how smart they are rather than how fortunate the conditions were? That question does not have an answer yet, which means the story is not finished. The next video on this channel goes somewhere you might not expect, because John Deere's survival story is only half of what happened in the 1980s. The other half is what the farmers who lost everything actually did next. And that story has never been told the way it deserves to be told. If you want to be there when it is, stay around.